As far as residential areas are concerned, the practical situation is that until about 10 years ago, there were no residential areas for urban Bantu people. It is only in the last few years that such areas were set aside on a planned basis and developed at a terrific pace, as you can see all around you.
African struggles have been emphasized ever since other countries began claiming land, all the way back through the 19th century. But in 1910, South Africa gained independence from Britain. However, only whites had freedom, even though they only made up 20% of the population. One of the most devastating times regarding African struggles was the creation of the apartheid. Apartheid is the forced separation of races. South Africans living under the rule of apartheid had to be registered according to their ethnicity. The people of Africa soon began to fight back against the apartheid. In addition, the African National Congress was organized to represent the Africans against the apartheid. But the government quickly shut down the African National Congress and arrested many black rights groups. Nelson Mandela was an active leader of the African National Congress and part of the arrest in 1960. He was condemned to a life in prison for treason against the apartheid. President F.W. de Klerk lifted the apartheid and ended the ban of the African National Congress in 1990. Nelson Mandela was also freed from his life sentence.
I wish to put it plainly that the government has taken a firm decision to release Mr. Mandela unconditionally. I am serious about bringing...
In a speech that stunned Parliament and the world, Frederick Willem de Klerk, or FW, unbanned the African National Congress, lifted the state of emergency, and promised equal rights for all that would lead to South Africa's first fully democratic elections.
When Nelson was freed and all races were allowed to vote, Mandela was quickly voted president of South Africa. He was their first democratic leader. During his presidency, the economic differences between blacks and whites was still substantial. Whites still occupied more than 75% of the land, and blacks and Asians were in poverty. One example of recent African struggle is the Rwandan genocide. It began in the early 1990s when tension increased between the Hutus and the Tutsis due to physical classification. In 1994, extremist Hutus urged other Hutus to kill the neighboring Tutsis. Only 100 days later, 800,000 Tutsis lay dead. Towards the end of the genocide, France had sent troops to prevent the situation from intensifying. And after it ended, the United Nations assisted in the rebuilding of towns and the recovery of the people.